Hi, everyone. Welcome. Crystal Dakuna here from the Inside View. So excited to see you all again. Come on in. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to get in. I'm actually just doing a social media post. I'm going to be sharing stories today about how great women, great lady leaders are really attracting top talent to inspire some really great conversations. So I'm actually just doing Instagram posts to tag some of the wonderful women that I'm going to be talking about today who've made a real big impact in my life. And so just sharing this on Instagram. Would love for you to come on into the conversation. If you are on LinkedIn, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, go ahead and tell us where you're from in the chat. I would love to know where you're from, where you're watching from. And we'd also love to know a little bit about, if you're watching live, so go ahead and write IV Live in the chat, hashtag IV Live. Or if you're watching this on replay, go ahead and write hashtag IV replay. So we'd love to know, as we're starting to do these lives more often, hey, it's a long weekend. Anybody got some long weekend plans? Go ahead and let us know in the chat about your long weekend plans. But we thought we'd come at you on all of our platforms to talk about this really exciting topic. So before I go further, I'd love to invite my colleague to the stage, Deepta Rayner. Deepta, are you there? So Deepta and I are going to chat together today. Hey, Deepta.
Hi, how are you, Crystal?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining me today. I thought, what better way to kind of start off the long weekend than to have a great conversation about what are some of the things that great lady leaders do to really attract some top talent and inspire their teams. And I know you've had a lot of great experience with leaders in your life and just being an impactful leader yourself. And so, I thought we'd have a good chat. Are you up for a good chat?
I am up for a great chat, Crystal.
Fantastic. So let's get into it, Deepta. Let's talk about it. Let's wait for a couple more people to hop in. Go ahead.
Sure.
We're just about everywhere. So go ahead and let us know where you're from, where you're watching from today. And you know what I'd love to know in the chat, Deepta, and go ahead and share with me yours. I'd love to know, is there a woman that stands out to you that really is a woman that inspired you throughout your career, whether it's personally or professionally? I think that's a key thing too, right? There's certain women leaders that will really impact us, our personal lives, but then also our professional lives. So I'd love to hear. Do you have anybody that stands out right away?
I have been so fortunate to have amazing female leaders in my life, throughout my life, whether it's at home, at school, in my career. It's hard to pick just one story, Crystal.
I know, right? I know.
Let me think about this. I think, one of my first jobs coming out of university, I had a female lead who was strong, made amazing decisions based on not only the facts, but also her life experience really helped her be a great and fantastic leader. One of the things I really loved about her leadership style is that she was very much a good listener. And it didn't really matter what role you were in, what level of seniority you had within the organization. She was a very senior leader at this organization I was at, and she would invite me into her office just to have a chat and to listen. And, what's going right, what's not going right, personally and professionally. And that can make a huge difference for someone who's starting their career out.
For sure. And so was there something specific that you held on to all these years, or that you think of, is there something that you do in business that you're like, oh, she taught me that, or, I get that from her, anything like that?
I think it's being open and having that open door policy has really taken me throughout my career. So when I've been a leader as well, having that open door policy and knowing that my team is able to come in and knock on the door and say, do you have a minute? And always saying yes. Always have a minute for your team.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I have to share that it's that empathy, right? It's that level
Mhm.
of empathy that sometimes women leaders have that, hey, listen, I've had a lot of really great male role models in my life that have inspired me as well. And but I will say one of the characteristics that's similar between some of the male inspiration as well as the female inspiration is that level of empathy, right? And that level of being a leader that inspires as opposed to a leader that really kind of, dictates the conversation, right? Somebody that's really connected with you. And I got to share, I mean, I would be remiss to not to mention all the great lady leaders in particular. And I don't want to say that there's been a lot of phenomenal male leaders as well that have really inspired me. But this topic in particular, there's some nuances deep down between, that connection that a lot of great lady leaders have. And there's so many. I was 16. I'm actually just checking here on LinkedIn because I would like for her to be on this live if she can, as I share her how she's inspired me. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to do LinkedIn on my phone and tag her and let her know that I'm going to be talking about her because she's just well, her and many others. So I was really fortunate, Deepta, that I was about 16 when I started my career at a little company you may know called Danier Leather, and uh, and I just, I was 16 years old, and Danier Leather at the time was like, it was the best store in the mall. It had a corner. It was like this big corner store, and anybody wanted to work at that location at that store because it was really like it was the most prestigious, one of the most prestigious stores in the mall, aside from the jewelry store. That was the place you wanted to be. And um and so, I was really fortunate to be able to work there. I was 16 and I was learning from some really great leaders. And I remember my first boss, and that's what I'm trying to text, but I can't seem to get her right now because I would love for her to be on there. So excuse me 1 second, but I'm just going to tag her really, really quickly because maybe she can hear what I'm going to say about her. It's always a nice way to be able to share back. But anyways, her name was Brenda, and she was my first boss. And she's done some of the things that Brenda has done to inspire me at 16. I still do today. And I've shared this with you, Deep Down, and with our whole team so many times. We talk about vision boarding all the time, right? About having that forethought. I was 16 and vision boards were just coming out, and Oprah had just started talking about them, and they were just kind of this thing that were just starting to take mainstream. And I remember my boss saying, hey guys, what do you think if we, she had an Oprah magazine there. She's like, what do you think if we just start, maybe doing this idea that I saw, vision boards? And we're like, okay, cool. And so we're in the back room of our Danier store, and we start ripping out pictures of magazines and we start putting them together on a vision board. And so at the time we actually created a vision board for our team. And so, what were some of the team goals, and what were some of the personal things that we wanted to acquire through the ability that we were able to sell and earn some great money and do some great things. But imagine having that like when you're 16.
Mhm.
I'm 41 now. I still do my vision boards every year. And I tell you, like, well, we've been doing this together, eh, Deepta?
Mhm. That's right.
Right?
And you know what? Having that inspiration, Crystal, is so important. And I've had so many female leaders who inspire others to inspire themselves, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it. That's part of being a really great leader is just having that inspiration to do more, to do better, to be better.
Yeah, exactly. And in for me in that environment, growing up in a retail environment with such a strong, there were so many strong female leaders. And when I think about all of them, again, this is when I was 16. I'm now 41, and I'm still in touch with almost all of those lady leaders because they all gave me an element of some part of what I do today. Around designing experiences for people, I'm always thinking of all of them, and they know it because I usually tag them or stay connected. But it's just amazing that they're really the ones that have been able to inspire me to this level. So I'll share another a story with you guys of another lady leader who inspired me a lot. So again, Danier, I remember I was like I don't know, maybe my first couple of months working there. And this lady starts to walk towards the store, and I'm sitting there, ready. I'm eager. I'm always the first one to greet every customer. and she's walking towards the door, and she's got this power suit on, and I hope she listens to this, but she's got this power suit on. At the time, we had this green, it was like a python print suede suit, and it was like, this jacket with the pencil skirt, and she looked phenomenal. And shorter lady, but like just powerful in this suit, and she's walking right towards the store, and I'm like, wow, that's our suit, and it looks so great on her. I had no idea who she was. And she starts walking into the store, and I greet her and I say, welcome. And she's looking at me like, you don't know who I am. Like, you don't know who I am. And I just say, you look fantastic. I said, did you get it from this location? And she's just like, yeah, from another location. And she was giving me very little information, right? But she walked in, and I remember just being inspired by her confidence. And her name is Chris, and she might be on this chat today. Chris, if you're here, if you're watching from anywhere, please go ahead and say hello. But I remember just seeing the strength in her, and thinking, wow, like, and then she spent the whole day with us. She put her purse down, and she got in with us, and she walked through the entire store with my boss at the time, Brenda, and myself. And she's like, how about we try this? How about we try this? And this is why. And I'll never forget that first session with her, that first time. It was like I was learning to be, from a salesperson, to be really more of a merchant, right? And to really be able to understand why I was making the decisions I was making. And literally from that day till today, those little nuances are still with me. But it's women leaders like that. And then throughout my career, very much involved in like, okay, Crystal, this is what you need to get to the next step. This is what we need to do to inspire others. And this is how we're going to lead people. We're not going to lead through dictatorship. We're going to lead through, igniting them, exciting them, and delighting them. And that's literally our methodology today at the Inside View, right? And so, yeah, so I'm just so thankful for everything that they've taught me. So Deepta, let's kind of shift gears here. We did a great little blog this week on our page. We're just starting to get on top of our media things, and so the blog topic. Let's dive into it a little bit, Deepta.
Yeah, sure. So when I'm just looking at the other screen here, how great women leaders attract top talent, communicate with confidence, and inspire the next generation. So Crystal, talk to me a little bit about attracting top talent. What do women do differently, or what can they do differently?
Yeah, such a good question. So, what we find when, top talent is definitely a need right now, just about everywhere, right? It's about making sure that they are, that we're getting people that want to work with us, that are service minded, that are passionate about your product or service, right? If you are, a software as a sales company, and you're looking for somebody who's, maybe more retail focused or more retail background, you got to make sure that that's their passion, like the software side of things and the product and service that you're selling, or that you're working on, is something that ignites them, that really excites and delights them. Because if it doesn't, then you're going to lose that connection. If it's just a job, Deepta, right, then it's just not the right fit. And so when we're trying to attract top talent, I think a couple of the things is, number one, diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important in today's world, right? And so we talk a little bit about, or what some of the great women leaders do, is that they're mindful, very, very mindful, of where they're posting that job. What is the verbiage and the language that they're using in that job? Is that language going to attract somebody of the caliber that you're looking for? Or is the language going to attract, because does the job description sound like everybody else's job description, right? Yeah. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And there's so many of those things where, somebody's searching for a job. There's literally, I could see the exact same job description on every post, with just a few minute changes. But we need our job description to like jump out. And it's not just a job, it's a career. If you're looking for somebody that's top talent, they're not looking for a job, they're looking for a long-term career with your organization. And so I think it's important to even have a second or third party, or somebody who is of top talent, take a look at that role description and really say, hey, does this inspire you? Does this make you excited about the job? Right? Does this, I know, Deepta, when you started working on our team, do you want to share kind of some of your feedback from that?
Well, before I do that, I
Yeah.
want to say, does the job description reflect the culture that you're trying to create for your organization? I've seen so many job descriptions that are rote, they
Yeah.
all look the same as you say, but the ones that start to bring out the culture and say, do you want to work at an organization where,
Yeah.
and you start asking those aspirational questions. That is a differentiator right there, is trying to reflect some of your culture and some of your norms in your job description to attract the people who are like-minded in that way
For
and
sure.
will thrive in an environment that you're trying to create.
Yeah. One of the things I like to do is do video requests, right? So we've even done like a video job description. So it's like, hey, here's the role. Does this sound like an environment where you want to be in? Because my energy is, well, you're on my daily huddles. I don't know. What does a daily huddle feel like to you?
Full of energy, Crystal. And what I love about our daily huddles is that we start off with good news from everybody on the team.
Yeah.
And that just shifts everybody's mindset. So there's lots of things that are going on in the world, a lot of negative things that are happening. But as soon as we get on that call, we start talking about happy things and getting on that happy note so we can start our day off right.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a conscious decision that we've made, but more importantly, I think is also that's as a organization, that's the culture we create, right? That's the culture that we're putting together, and that hey, that's what we teach people, right? We teach people how to create experiences. We got to create an experience for ourselves, and I need somebody who's not going to be coming to those huddles, be like, oh, here she goes again. Here Crystal goes again. So I get a dose of Crystal every morning. I need somebody who's going to contribute to that, right? Contribute to that energy, contribute to that, because hey, do I have bad days? Of course I have bad days. And so on that day that I have a bad day, I need my team member to lift me up.
That's
Right.
it.
And so that's how that culture is formed. So yeah, so to attract top talent, back to where we started, it's really about making sure that you're I think a lot of great women leaders understand the level of empathy, the level of courtesy, the level of compassion that's really needed to attract top talent. And when you're able to dive into it from that wholehearted place, like what are the things about your role and your job that absolutely inspire you to do better and be better? Those are the kind of feelings and emotions that need to be connected to that job description, right? All right, what's next for me, Deepta? Give it to me.
Okay. Let's talk about communication. And, again, what do women do differently and what could they do more of?
So many things. But in communication, again, I'm going to bring this back to that empathy side of things. I think it's
Mhm.
about, understanding as women, um, there's so many balls that we have up in the air at all time, right? And so we've got trying to run a home, trying to, for those of you with families, we're trying to run our families, we're trying to make sure that we're successful in our careers. I have my elderly grandmother lives with me, and so I'm trying to take care of her health and well-being. My parents live down the street who are starting to get to the next step as well, and so it's really about making sure that they're okay. There's a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure on us as women leaders, and so the way in which we communicate with our team and our people is going to really allow us to attract that top talent. And so it's the way we speak. So this is where your communication skills come in, that your body language and your facial expressions and your tone of voice um, are so important, like are just so important when you're communicating with even in the interview. So we've seen, I recently joined a client who was doing an interview, and they said, Crystal, I'm not having any luck. Can you hop in and tell me what I'm doing wrong? Maybe my interview questions are wrong. And, nobody seems to be the right fit. And so I eavesdropped on the interview, and I greeted the guest as well that was on there. And I noticed right away that the person interviewing, the interviewer, didn't it was their body language and their communication that was most likely turning off the potential candidate, right? And it was because of they were just getting to that nitty gritty. They had a checklist of questions that they had to get through, that they wanted to answer to, but there was no real additional feedback or questions or comments that was happening, right? And so it was interesting because it brought me back again to my Danier days, is when we started, when we were interviewing people, we would say, okay, well, let's see how they are on the floor. Let's see how they are with people. It wasn't about the resume. The resume is important, but hey, listen, if you're not good with people and you're not going to be able to connect with people the way we have a standard. I remember Brenda and Chris and all the great leaders that were with me at Danier. There was like a standard of excellence that if we didn't, get to that standard of excellence, it's like, hey, Crystal, what's going on with you today? Go grab, go. Maybe they're the ones that got me hooked on Starbucks. I don't know. But it was like, if you're not at your best, then nothing, it's not going to work for your customer. And why would we do that? Right. And so I think it's this level of understanding how impactful our communication is and our tone is and our voice and our body language really is, because it really makes a difference, right? In how we're communicating with their people. But at the interview level, like that's as much as we have an expectation of them, Deepta, would you agree that they have to have they have an expectation of us? Right?
Absolutely. I would extend this into, sort of contrasting to your Danier experience. I've spent a lot of time in office buildings, and I've worked at 3 of the big banks in Canada, and our women leaders have to be so strong at their communication skills. They are being watched from many different angles, from every level of the organization. And so I see them preparing, when they have to do a presentation. I see them practicing. I see them doing dry runs. I see them really focused on where to emphasize certain words, how to use their hands in communication when they're doing a presentation. And it's one thing if they're doing a presentation, another thing if they're trying to inspire the team to do something. And so these women leaders that I've observed have really honed in on how to effectively communicate in multiple different environments, right? Because whether they're in the field and presenting at a branch or greeting folks and customers live and in person versus on a Zoom call versus on, in a big board meeting trying to get approval for something. And those communication skills, and Crystal talks about this all the time, communication skills, and maybe you can mention, what are the elements of communication that are really important, because it's more than the tone of your voice. It's more than the body language that you set out.
Yeah. So actually, let's do a little role play, Deepta, here. So I'm going to say a sentence, and I want you to tell me what you're thinking when I say it. So I'm making up a sentence right now. So let's do it this way. I didn't say I drank the purple Kool-Aid. I didn't say I drank the purple Kool-Aid.
You're sounding very defensive.
And what is my emphasis on? So I didn't say I drank the purple Kool-Aid. What are you thinking in your mind when I'm saying that?
You're saying somebody else did it.
Yeah, I didn't say I drank the purple Kool-Aid, right? And my face and my tone, and it's like very defensive. You can even see my shoulders changing, right? As opposed to me saying, I didn't say I drank the purple Kool-Aid.
You drank a different color of Kool-Aid, baby, but you did drink something.
Yeah. I didn't say the purple Kool-Aid or drank the purple Kool-Aid. Or I might be saying, well, I didn't say I drank the purple Kool-Aid. Right? So same thing, but my face is totally different. My facial expressions are different. How did you feel when I said the same thing that time?
It almost felt like you had a secret, like you knew who drank it.
Exactly, right? I didn't say I drank the purple Kool-Aid, right? So it's and it's literally the same sentence, but it's the way in which we approach that sentence is so important. And so, think about those. If you're in a call center environment and you pick up the phone and you say, good afternoon, Jones and Company, Crystal. Good afternoon, Jones and Company, Crystal speaking. Versus good afternoon, Jones and Company, Crystal speaking. Right? It's your tone that makes such a difference. And all of a sudden, the person on the other end of that phone is going to respond and react differently because they know that, hey, this person wants to help. There's this different level of empathy there.
Yeah.
And so those are great little practice things to do when we're communicating. And again, we're trying to find top talent. in that communication, it's really important. And hey, we're doing these interviews nowadays virtually. And I think there's a statistic that I shared in the blog. I think it was like 45% of women business leaders say it's difficult for them to speak up in an online virtual meeting. And so when you think about that from an interview perspective, you might have 3 or 4 interviewers and 1 interviewee, right? And so it could be challenging for them to speak up. Not to say that they're the wrong fit, but this goes back to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's one thing to be invited to the dance, invited to the interview, but it's another thing to really being asked to dance. So, hey, tell me more about that, Deepta. I'd love to learn more about, your thoughts on this topic. And you're starting to really observe their body language. We actually, what call were we on, Deepta, where we noticed somebody's body language completely changed the other day? I'm trying to think without saying names. Yes. It was yesterday, wasn't it? Was it yesterday?
It was yesterday.
And I was chatting, and I wasn't getting through to this particular person the way I wanted to. And Deepta saw it. And Deepta, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, I don't want to give too much away about the actual conversation, but I did notice the body language was becoming a little bit offset. Let's just say.
Yeah.
And so when I interjected in the conversation and started to talk about and really explain to the person on the other end of the call, here's how this is going to benefit your team, your program. It just having that little bit of insight to sort of observe their body language, observe where their thoughts were going, and able to then communicate with them effectively to say, this is how this program is going to impact your team, and in turn, how your team can impact others in a positive way. Body language shifted immediately after that.
Immediately. So quickly. We saw, like, literally, she sat up in her seat, and she nodded her head. And it was just so powerful. And we're like, that's communication. I wasn't communicating it properly. And I think, the conversation was shifting, and there was a lot of elements involved. But what was beautiful was that we were working together, and you were able to see that it wasn't working. And when you were able to shift in and add into the conversation, immediately the conversation was back on course, right? Immediately
That's right.
Back on course. So I just think that's really powerful too, is being able to kind of recognize those opportunities. All right, what are we diving into next?
All right, Crystal, how do we inspire in others? What are the keys to inspiration as a female leader?
Yeah, so for female leaders in particular, but also just like I said, leaders in general. I think this is important because I think a lot of female leaders get this a little bit more. And it's not it's actually statistical that there is data to support this. But I think a lot of it is that, a lot of female leaders have their own journey. Everybody's got their journey, but often that we find female leaders have their journey and share a little more openly about their journey. And when they share a little more openly about their journey, it allows them to have this little sense of vulnerability and this little bit of, that humbleness and that connection people find. And so I've often find, even for myself, women of color might be more attracted to certain things that I'm doing, or inspired by certain things that I'm doing. And so those are really key kind of little comments that really help to inspire people, right? To be able to take them to the next level. So when I think about what great women leaders are doing now, and I'm thinking of some of our clients actually, and what they're doing to really understand how they can, attract this top talent, communicate with them effectively, and ultimately inspire that next generation. One of the tools that they're using is the journey mapping tool. And Deepta, I know, we're so passionate about using journey mapping in the design thinking world because we use it with so many of our clients. But one client I'm thinking of in particular, we're able to use journey mapping to really understand her employee experience.
Yeah.
So she's got a good sized team, and she's established in business, and they're just the team is running really well. And she says, Crystal, let's pump the brakes for a moment. And as I continue to build this team, I would really love to be able to find out where along this journey can I attract the top talent? can I nurture and mentor that top talent before they join my team? Like, how can I make it so that my team is attractive to them to be able to come and join, right? And so I'm literally inspiring them before they're at a stage where I can hire them. And we did this often at Danier. Again, I remember so many of our leaders. Heather Loico was actually one of, I need a glass of water. Pardon me, was actually one of the leaders that inspired me. I might need to take a moment. give me 1 moment. This is what happens with live. Give me 1 moment.
So I'll say with employee journey mapping, it is a fantastic tool for those of you who are not familiar with what journey mapping is. It literally is taking all the various touch points across an interaction, whether it's with an employee, a customer, a partner, and really taking a look at every touch point along that journey and really understanding what is going through the mind of the person on the other end, whether it's, a happy interaction, a frustrating interaction, really understanding what they're thinking, feeling, and doing at every point along that journey with you to really understand what their experience is like with your organization.
Sorry, it took me a minute. Sometimes that happens on live.
Yes.
Thanks. I was sharing. I'm sorry, I missed what you were saying, Deepta.
No, I was just explaining what a customer journey map or a journey map is.
Perfect. And I think I was sharing about Heather, actually. Heather Loico was one of my leaders back in the day. And she was fantastic at really sharing when I was in a place where I always had to have people. I was managing and leading a location that was one of the busiest locations in Canada. And it was just consistently busy. And we needed to make sure that we always had top talent. Thank you. We always had top talent present. And so, she really taught me about, Crystal, you got to have a bench. You want to build a bench of top talent so that when you need it, you're not in a position of, just hiring somebody because you need that person. And if you've ever worked in retail or in the restaurant industry, you know what I'm talking about, right? Where we just hire somebody to hire them. And we never wanted to be in that position. We always wanted to make sure we were in a position of strength and a position where we're bringing on the right people for the role. And so this idea of benching and making sure that you've got good relationships with people it wasn't just Heather. It was so many of the leaders that shared this with me, but it was about how you can develop those relationships on the side and then, continue to nurture them and develop them, whether it's, having a coffee chat with a competitor or a colleague or somebody in just a different industry completely. We were hiring for retail. So perhaps from the restaurant industry or the hospitality industry, just somebody completely random, but you're having those relationship building conversations. We would meet people at the gym that were a great fit for our culture. And so, when it wasn't necessarily an interview process, but it was a relationship building process. And so as we continue to build a relationship, when the time was ready, then we could make those hiring decisions. And so actually I had gotten into a habit of whether or not we needed people to join our team. Every single month, I was doing a group interview or, individual interviews, but I really tried to have those group interview conversations. And I was very transparent that, hey, I'm not sure if I've got a role for you yet, but I wanted to make sure I connected with all of you and let's have an open conversation. And so sometimes those group interviews were, maybe 45 minutes and it was just all of them, seeing how they all interacted with each other as opposed to just with me, right? What was that like? And did they stay in touch with each other? And what was so cool is often, they stayed in touch with each other. They became friends with each other. And then I knew that they were perhaps a good fit for our team. So really understanding kind of the journey of where people are before they join your team, I think is important. And so going back to the journey mapping tool, it allows you to build your bench, right? It allows you to be able to see, okay, here's the journey. Here's 6 months before they join our team. Here's where they are in their career, or maybe even a year or 2 years before they join their team. Here's where they are in their career. And so how can I be the company or the organization or the leader that inspires them at that moment, right? How can I be the organization where they want to say, one day I want to work there, right? How can we position ourselves to be able to do that? Well, it's through our culture, but it's also through connecting and reaching out and making sure that we're in those environments where those people are.
And I would add to that, Crystal, in a large matrix environment like in the banking world that I come from, it worked a little bit differently, but it was still very much similar. And so the corporate leaders would often have breakfasts with up and coming talent. And so, yes, it was within the organization, but when you're talking about 40 to 80,000 people in an organization having breakfast with an executive at a bank, it's a big deal. And they were observing us as much as we were observing them. You know, who's interacting with who is helping each other out in this conversation or in this environment, and who is in it for themselves. And it's quite apparent very quickly, you know, who the team players are.
Yeah, I love that. Even in group interviews, so we try to do now in the virtual world, we've been doing these group interviews a little bit differently, but sometimes I'll just leave them and I'll put a question in the chat and I'll say I'll be back in a couple minutes and almost remove myself from the camera, but put the chat up and say, hey, I'll leave it to you to chat and see how it goes. And you see the behaviors start to happen. You see that leaders start to step up. One of the fun things I'll do in a group interview is in person. I'll say on the count of 3, point to the leader in the group. And somebody always points to a leader in the group, and you'd be surprised at how often it's not them, right? It's not themselves. And so if a leadership is a behavior and a skill that I'm looking for when I'm hiring that position, 9 times out of 10 they've already got those behaviors, right? That person that they've all pointed to already has inspired them in the first 5 or 10 minutes of meeting other people. And so those behaviors are really important. And so as a women leader, I really love that tool of using that journey mapping tool to be able to visually see the experience that your potential candidate, your career building candidate, is really going through, and then how you can be aligned in those moments of truth where they're going to choose you or choose somebody else or choose another organization. Where are you positioned? Where's your organization positioned along their journey? It's really powerful to get ahead of that ideal employee's experience, as opposed to, hey, it's also powerful to analyze and understand the employee's journey when they're with you, so you can retain them. It's one thing to get top talent, it's another thing to keep top talent, right? I'm looking at our LinkedIn. We've got a couple more questions. Go ahead, Deepta.
I was just going to ask you about how do you engage employees that you've had sometimes for 5 or 10 years. So some tenured team members. How do you keep that inspiration alive, Crystal?
That's such a good question. So I think voice of employee data is really important. I think gathering some, I'm not one to get data paralysis. We work with small, medium businesses in particular for that reason, that we don't want to get bombarded by, data consistently. But it is important to understand, whether we do a survey or a voice of customer analysis or some type of focus group, but gathering that data is really important. The one thing I'll say, though, is when we're gathering the data, we want to have somebody or something in place to say, hey, we've got it, now we're ready to action it. Because that's the missing link sometimes, is we might ask for the information, but then there's nobody to action it. We just met with an organization not too long ago. I said, oh, hey, did you do an employee engagement survey? I heard you had mentioned. So she's like, yeah, we did it. And, our scores were really great. And I said, okay, what were the scores? She says, we were in the high 70s. I'm like, that's fantastic. For the size of their team, that was great. And I said, okay, so when did you do it? And it was like 19 months ago. Oh. And so it was like, okay, so that data is no longer relevant in a COVID world, which is, we've been in COVID now, 16, 17 months. And so it's like, it's just not relevant. It's a completely different world. And so we have to stay on top of, but in their mindset, as a leadership team, in their mindset, they still had that high 70s as an employee engagement score, which is dangerous, right? Because things may or may not have gotten better or gotten worse in their journey. And so to retain, back to your question of how do you retain them, number one, we want to ask. We want to ask, right? We want to ask them, hey, what's important to you? How can we help? Right now, what are you struggling with? We know some organizations right now that are seeing that are asking the questions, and then their people are telling them and say, what, if somebody could just cook dinner for me once a night, and so maybe the cost of Good Eats or Fresh Eats or one of those meal prep companies is something that that might help your teammate, right? And so you budget is one thing, right? Like if we've got a budget, that's great. Life is a lot more easier. But when we don't have money or when we don't have a budget to be able to do these things, we got to be able to kind of see, well, what's the cost of losing that person? Right? The cost of losing that person is quite expensive, because then you're hiring again, you're training again, you're onboarding again. It's a whole nother ball game. And so we need to be able to really journey map that employee experience as well. And then when you're asking them for feedback, that you want to be able to action their feedback. I also would say, Deep, that it's great to get them involved in the conversation, right? To say, hey, this is such great feedback. Let's put together a committee. Let's look at how we can implement certain things, right? And also, I think organizations need to start understanding that there needs to be time, money, and resources allotted to the initiatives that we're doing, right? We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion and equity with our customers. And we certainly talk a lot about customer experience design. That's our world. But we often find that people want to do things without allotting the time, money, or resources, right? Especially small businesses, because small businesses are worried about making payroll. Small businesses are worried about keeping the doors open. And so understanding that they're not quite understanding how customer experience or diversity inclusion really affects their end game is huge. But when they can start to see the results in the successes of customer experience design and diversity inclusion, that's when they start to make those changes, right?
Yeah. We did get a question in.
Perfect.
How do you create that safe space for employees to be able to have a conversation?
Oh, such a good question. That's a deep one. So how do you create a safe space? Well, I think it goes back to your culture. So in our we teach a customer experience mastery training program, and one of the elements in that training program is called culture connection. And in culture connection, we really dive into the traditions of your organization. They're either happening right now by default or by design. And very few small, medium businesses are doing it by design. It's happening by default, right? Your culture is happening. I'm of East Indian descent. We have a lot of traditions and a lot of things that we do within our culture. Born and raised Canadian, so there's those Canadian elements of our culture, but then there's also a lot of traditional elements of my culture. And so those are things that are happening by default now, because they're always going to happen. And I think that's what is also happening within organizations, is that the culture is happening by default, and we want to start designing what that culture needs to look like, to be able to inspire and ignite and excite and delight, right? And so if we want to create that safe space for employees, when we're starting to design the culture in which they're working in, we want to take a look at, where is it that they might need support? And one of the tools we recommend is kind of steering away from that annual review process, and instead, getting more in the habit of doing regular coaching conversations. And then those regular coaching conversations are not always about coaching so that you're trying to lift somebody up, but sometimes it's just about listening, right, Deepta? Like, it's just about
Absolutely.
You started this day off by talking about listening.
Yes, we did. And I would say that safe spaces, when you create safe spaces for your employees, you're also creating safe spaces for your clients. And Crystal and I, we've both had conversations with customers recently where, it's our first interaction with them, and we're meeting on a Zoom call. And we've said this is a safe space, and giving those clients the breathing room to actually have vulnerable conversations that lead to them being better leaders. And these are female leaders that we were talking to recently. Yeah.
That's a great example. Great. You just brought me right back to it. Is if we didn't say those words, that, hey, this is a safe space. Like, this is absolutely a safe space. Feel free. The vulnerability that provoked, and the all we needed to say were those words. But we also need to action those words, right? We also need to support them and not give them solutions and give them, like, there's a million things that were going through my head when they shared that, but the most important thing that was going through my head was just listen, Crystal. Just listen, just be empathetic, listen and understand. There's a great video by Brene Brown for those of you that have perhaps seen it. It's like a huge, if you just Google Brene Brown empathy, I'm sure deep down we've seen it before, but it's a really great video to be able to share, to see that, to be able to create that safe space and that conversation for people. Sometimes you just have to listen. It's probably, they say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Awesome. I see another question in there, Deepta. Do you want to?
Sure. How do you make sure that your employees or coworkers are growing and realizing their full potential as a woman leader?
Oh, such a good question. Do you want to chime into this one?
Oh, well, there's so many things that you can do, but I would again start with that question: is what do you want from your career? And then ask the question, how can I help you get there? Right?
Yeah. This question brings me back to two other female leaders that again inspired me. Both who I'm in contact with still, and again, I think I met with them when I was probably in my early 20s. I'll share their names, Zelma and Shannon. So very different leadership styles, both phenomenal leaders. And I think about, how they kind of pushed me and challenged me to see my full potential. I got to this space in retail where I thought, is this just retail? Am I just I'm here now. Am I just stuck in this? What am I going to do? But, I was going to university. I wasn't sure if I knew I was really loving it. I knew I was really enjoying it. And I remember having a conversation with Zelma, and she said, Crystal, you're a merchant and you're not just working in retail. You're actually inspiring the next generation. Like you're, we give you somebody as a key holder and you push them up and develop them and push them into another location. Like you don't know the impact of your training. And I really didn't know it. But what I realized that I was doing was what they were doing for me. Yeah. Right? They were seeing something in me and I was doing the exact same thing for somebody else. Right. I remember Shannon and I had a really tough conversation one time. I was not her fan. I was like, this is it. Like, she made me so angry about something and I was so upset. And then about 2 days later, I thought, oh my gosh, I learned so much from that conversation. At the moment, I was like upset with it. I thought, how could she, but when I walked away from it, I learned so much. I learned so much from that conversation and I learned so much from that relationship, right? They say life happens for you, not to you. And so many of these great interactions, I really contribute to my entrepreneurial spirit and just my success in leadership when it comes to, inspiring others is because I was so highly inspired by these great women leaders. So, so get back to your question here. How do you make sure that employees and coworkers are growing and realizing their full potential? I think it comes from a really important place of authenticity and transparency. And if you're a leader that is really committed to pushing people past yourself. So actually, Deep, that reminds me of the title of our of step 2 in CX mastery and customer, the course we train. It's called Lovesick Leadership.
Yeah.
And I named it Lovesick Leadership because I felt that one of the reasons I was able to really inspire great other fantastic women leaders was because I was lovesick about them. Just like we're lovesick about our kids, right? We want our kids to do bigger and brighter and better than us. Well, my vision for my teammates and for my the leaders that I'd always hired was for them to do bigger and brighter things. And that came because that's the environment I grew up in, but that's not the same environment and mindset for many leaders, right? Many leaders just don't have that same inspiration. So I think it's about really coming from an authentic place that, if you see the success in others, the success for you will come by default, right? But by design, if you can make it happen for them.
Yeah, I think it's also some elements of coaching really come through here as well, right? And really trying to understand what are the goals of the employees or your team members and how can you support them in achieving those goals, whether it's education or training or just, doing things differently. to handle situations better. And I found that just having those, that listening ear to sort of watch for those signals to say, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it. And being able to support employees is so important.
That's awesome. I think for those women that are watching this, and please go ahead and put in the chat if you're watching this live or replay. If you're watching it live, go ahead and write hashtag IV live. If you're watching a replay, go ahead and write hashtag IV replay. IV is the inside view. So go ahead and share that with us in the comments. But for those women that are watching this, I think, to really understand how your words, your personality, your tone, your communication style, how much other people value that, and how much of an impact it really is making, not only on the people that you're working with now, but also that next generation, right? Like from before you have that relationship with a person. I think of some of our team members on our team, before I even had a relationship with one of our teammates, I actually didn't realize the impact I was making on her outside of our environment, right? From until she told me, right? So it's like that's really empowering as a leader to know that I didn't think that was actually something she was paying attention to, but clearly it was, right? And so the more we equip ourselves with that knowledge to say, hey, there's little things that we're doing long before that relationship is even built, is important. So. All right, so we've totally gone over our time.
I would love to say one other thing, Crystal. I think female leaders up until 2 years ago were really, really great at understanding that employees have life outside of work. And I think that's really changed for all leaders over the last year and a half, in understanding that life happens and that there are things outside of your control, outside of work. And I think we've seen a lot of leaders really take a look at what it means to embrace the whole employee.
Yeah, listen, if somebody's not good in their personal life, there's no way they're going to be good in their professional life, right? If you need a minute to just go do your thing, like we have to create environments for our team that allow for that, right? Like, because if you don't, what good are you to anybody else? It's just like they say, right? You got to put your mask on before you put your kid's mask on. It's the same idea, same concept, is that we have to design environments where it's okay. I remember, there was times where I wouldn't call in sick to work because, I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, my kid's sick and my kid's got pink eye or this, that, or whatever it was. And I was like petrified to be able to call into work, sick. It can't be that way anymore, my friends. That's not the expectation. People won't tolerate that, right? We have to be able to put ourselves first. I see my good friend Marion on the chat. Sorry, Deepta, can I just say hi to Marion real quick? Hey, Marion, thanks for being here. Marion's an author. She's wrote a fantastic book. And so I always love Marion's opinion. Thanks for being here, Marion. I think effective leaders understand we are people first and employees second. So true. It's really about, just understanding that these are emotions that you can't hide, right? And so, and celebrate with them, celebrate those successes. But my grandmother always says that, if you're going to, if somebody's a true friend, you're going to celebrate with them at their wedding, as well as, in the funerals and when those down times are. And so I think that's important with employees to know. It's through the good times and bad, right? You're developing this relationship through both. So it's important to be there. All right, how are we doing here? Are we tapping out soon?
I think so, Crystal. We've gone way over time.
This is supposed to be half an hour. It's totally what happens when two women start talking, eh?
In a good way.
In a good way. Hey, my friends, for those of you watching, thanks so much for tuning in. We're just diving into this live, world, and we're really enjoying it. So we're going to continue to come to you every Friday, whether it's a long weekend or not. We're here. We're going to continue to come to you live every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time on all three of our platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. Instagram, we're going to go live every now and then, but we are definitely committed to sharing some good content and value with you. And so please go ahead and let us know in the chat. Again, Ivy Live or Ivy Replay. We've also got a little gift for you. Deepta, if you've got that team building activity, you can pop in the chat. That would be fantastic.
Give me a sec.
So we've got a great little gift for anybody that's interested. We've got a virtual team building activity that may help. Again, you can customize this and tweak this a little bit for your environment. So we'd love to share that with you in the chat. And then we've got a couple of complimentary upcoming free training sessions that we've got coming up as well in September. So we've got an introduction to customer experience as well as introduction to diversity inclusion. If you're interested in one of those, please go ahead and connect with us, and we're happy to share that information with you as well. What are some of the last thoughts before we dive out? Hey, if you like this video, if you learned anything, please go ahead and give us some LinkedIn love or Facebook love. The algorithm loves it. And we can definitely continue to bring you some great content because we appreciate your comments and your little likes or thumbs ups or whatever you would love to share with us. We would really appreciate as we continue to kind of grow on this platform. So I think that's it for me. I'm ready to go meet a great colleague for lunch on this long weekend. How about you, Deepta? You ready for the long weekend?
Looking forward to it, Crystal. Can't wait.
Awesome. All right, my friends, thanks so much for joining us. Deepta, we will have this conversation again soon. I think that's it. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.